On today's show, Max Strus is out for at least 6 weeks with an ankle injury. I think there are 4 different players that could start in his place. I'll tell you who and why it makes sense for each of them on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like 92.3 The Fan, my new Substack, The Inside Shot, and Cleveland Magazine, as well as a number of other stops along the way. Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, help us grow the show. Make sure you're subscribed everywhere you get your podcasts. Also available on YouTube. Just search Locked On Cavs on YouTube. If you're watching this video right now, hit that thumbs up button for me, click the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Today's show, of course, is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. So we got some unfortunate news with the Cavaliers over the weekend as the team announced Max Strus suffered an ankle injury. I believe it was on Thursday during a workout in Chicago. Suffered an ankle injury, going to miss at least the first 6 weeks of the season. Said he will be reassessed at that time. This sounds like it is a pretty severe ankle injury. It's one that obviously is going to keep him out for a significant chunk of the season. I think that's the easiest way to say this. This means the Cavs are going to have to figure out what their starting group is going to look like. They're going to have to figure out an identity without Max Strus. Now, this is obviously not an ideal thing, but it's also not as if they're missing a member of the core 4, right? Like if there's a member of the starting 5 that they can replace, Max Strus is one that I think they can replace. And I think they can replace him in a number of different ways. So I've got 4 guys on the roster that I could potentially see as fits to slide into that starting small forward spot. Those guys: Dean Wade, Caris LeVert, Isaac Okoro, and Sam Merrill. I think all 4 of those guys make sense in some capacity to start. I'm going to explain why for all 4 of them. I'm going to start with Dean Wade. Now, we saw Dean Wade start in the final preseason game against the Chicago Bulls. Played okay, hit a few three-pointers. I think he finished with 14 points, which, you know, if you're 5th starter, and I understand it was an overtime game, but if your 5th starter scores 14 points, that's not the worst place to be. I think the Cavs would live with that type of production. Now, the question with Dean is he going to shoot enough three-pointers to justify being in the starting lineup? Because that is the thing. It has been a big storyline with the Cavs this entire preseason, throughout training camp, is Dean Wade going to shoot enough, right? Where he is a very effective shooter. I think he's a good connector. Everyone raves about him defensively, as, you know, the Cavs think he's one of the better perimeter defenders or just more versatile defenders in the league. I've talked about how I think he is pretty indispensable, I think is the word I've used, because the Cavs really only have one of him. They don't have somebody that is his size that does a lot of the things that he is capable of doing. So that is very important when you think of Dean Wade. But how does he fit alongside the rest of the core 4? So what I did was I went to Cleaning the Glass and I pulled stats from the 2022-2023 season. Obviously, Kenny Atkinson was not the coach, but that was the first year Donovan Mitchell was in Cleveland, and also Max Strus was not on the roster. So the guys I'm going to talk about, at least 3 of them primarily here, all played alongside the core 4. Dean Wade didn't play a ton, but there's enough that I can at least pull some stats. So that year, according to Cleaning the Glass, Dean Wade played 80 possessions alongside Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen. Not a huge sample size. It's a pretty small sample size, but it's what we have to go by. In those 80 possessions, the Cavs had a net rating of plus 20.7. So that really means they outscored their opponents by like 16 points in those 80 possessions. Pretty good. That is a good place to be, but I don't know that that's enough of a sample size to say, okay, this is something that should be done because it's something that happened 2 years ago. Now, I think Dean is pretty malleable. I don't know if the Cavs are going to want to play this big at the start, right? Like Kenny Atkinson's talked about the big lineup, which includes having Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley on the floor at the same time. But this is like ultra big. This is not quite as big as when Lauri Markkanen was here, but it's kind of the next best thing. Like it's kind of the next biggest thing that they can go to is having Dean Wade in this spot. So I don't know if that's the answer. I think there actually is going to be, and this is one thing I will be very curious to hear from Kenny the next time he speaks is this something where they want to have somebody be the full-time fill-in 3? Or is this going to be a matchup-based thing where you're going to have 4 starters locked in, and then depending on the opponent, depending on that night's matchup, that 4th or that 5th starter can rotate? I don't know the answer to that, but I will be very curious to find out. So if the Cavs want to play super big, if the Cavs believe Dean Wade is going to take as many 3-pointers as he should be taking, he could be an answer there. He could be. But I don't know if those things are going to, I don't know if that's going to be the reality that we live in. I don't. So then option number 2, as far as who could be that 5th starter for the Cavs, I think Caris LeVert is the guy we need to talk about next. Now, I've talked previously about LeVert and why I don't think he should be a starter, but it's worth noting that when he has played, he has played not the most minutes or possessions alongside the rest of the starting 5, but he's played a significant amount, and he's got some pretty good metrics. So in the 2022-2023 season, LeVert started the year as a starting small forward. It didn't last forever. Part of it was Darius Garland missed time with a lacerated eyelid that he had to, I think he missed 7 or 8 games at the start of the year. But LeVert did spend some time in the starting lineup alongside the rest of the core 4. So that season, LeVert played 456 possessions next to the core 4, according to Cleaning the Glass. That group had a plus 16.2 net rating. So they were very good together. This is a lineup that I've talked about. I don't love as the starting group. I don't think this is what the starting lineup should be. I don't think you're maximizing the starting lineup. I don't think you're maximizing the bench. I don't think you're maximizing Caris LeVert if this is the case. Caris has spoken in the past about how he feels he is at his best when he can get into a rhythm right away, when he can have the basketball in his hands very early on. Even in an offense that is much more free-flowing under Kenny Atkinson than JB Bickerstaff's was, according to the players. I don't know that Caris LeVert's going to be able to do that stuff when he's on the floor with at least 3 other guys that should be considered to be playmakers in Donovan and Darius and Evan, who, don't look now, had 8 assists in a preseason game. I don't know that that's going to be something that Caris can do, so I don't think he's being maximized if he's put in the starting lineup. Now, can he do it in a pinch? Yes. I actually think Caris should not be thought of as a replacement starter for Max Strus. Caris should be thought of as a replacement starter when one of Donovan or Darius has to miss time. That's when I think he should be in the starting lineup. I don't think him and Max are interchangeable, but I do think he can fill in for one of the guards starting in the backcourt. Number 3, Isaac Okoro. I think this is the best fit. I think Isaac Okoro in the starting lineup would be the best fit for the Cavs. He's played the most alongside the rest of the starting 5. I think he is very similar to Max Strus, maybe not quite as good, but I do think he's a better defender, not quite as good offensively. But I think Isaac Okoro makes the most sense because I think he brings perimeter defense that the Cavs will need. It's not to say that Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland are awful defenders on the perimeter. I don't believe that to be true, but I think Isaac Okoro is a really, really good defender on the perimeter in a way that those guys aren't. if Isaac is able to do more offensively than he has in the past, where Kenny has talked about not just parking him in the corner and only having him shoot threes, but having him be more part of the offense, I think Isaac becomes more valuable. I think it helps him that he's played alongside this group a ton. That season that I've talked about, he played 800 possessions next to the rest of the starting five, and that group was a plus 7.8 per 100 possessions. So they were not like elite by any stretch of the imagination, but that's a pretty good number. It's not as good as Caris LeVert's number, but it's a much bigger sample size, and it's still a really good number. Plus, with his, what I thought was improved three-point shooting last year, and if he can do more offensively, I think that is how you're maximizing the starting lineup without Max Strus. That's what I think this is, because then you're still able to stick him on the best offensive perimeter guy on the other team, which you could do with Caris as well, and to some extent Dean Wade, but it's determined on the matchup. And I don't know how much you're losing offensively. I think Max is a better connector, is a better playmaker than Isaac, but I am willing to see what Isaac's going to look like under Kenny Atkinson before really making a final judgment on who he is as an offensive player. And then lastly, Sam Merrill is the other guy that I think deserves to be mentioned in this conversation. Kenny Atkinson has talked about Sam very highly in camp so far. He thinks the world of Sam Merrill. I don't know that it makes a ton of sense, but I do think, Sam can provide something not a lot of other guys can provide, and he is an outstanding shooter. He's got a very quick release. I think he's a heady defender. I think he's a good defender, but I don't think he's somebody that I would want matching up with the opposing team's best perimeter player. So I wouldn't put him in this group, but I just do think that he is somebody that is worth mentioning in this conversation. I just think it's worth mentioning in the conversation. I would be surprised, but Kenny did say in the first preseason game when Max went down with that hip contusion, he put Dean Wade in that spot. And he said, maybe it would have made more sense to put Sam Merrill in that spot, just schematically. So that got me to thinking, okay, well, if Kenny brought him up in that situation, I think you have to bring him up in the reality that the Cavs are living in now, where they're not going to have Max Strus for at least the first 6 weeks of the season. So that's where I'm at. I don't know what it's going to be. I think this is going to be a very, very interesting thing to figure out. There's more that we have to react to because the Cavs wrapped up the preseason Friday nights. Oh, I've got thoughts. We will dive into that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. What is something that scares you right now? Just, maybe whisper it out loud or say it in your head. Just share a fear with yourself, no matter how big or small. And, it's kind of the perfect time of year to do that. Why? Because, hey, look at your calendar. Halloween coming up pretty soon. And Halloween does something where it sort of lets us have fun with the things that scares us. Maybe skeletons, ghosts, clowns. I don't know what scares you, but some of those things might. But those fears that we have might not involve the skeletons, the ghosts, the clowns, zombies, ghosts. They might involve real life things. And to help face those fears and overcome those real life things, therapy is a great tool because sometimes the scariest thing isn't actually those fears. It's not facing the fears in the first place, but it's holding yourself back. That can be the scariest thing sometimes. Like, it's helpful to learn positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It can empower you to be the best version of yourself. And therapy is not just for those who have experienced major trauma or, really significant hardships in their life. Therapy can be for everybody. So if you are thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It is entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA, LOCKEDONNBA, and you can get 10% off your first month. Again, BetterHelp.com code.com/LockedOnNBA, and you can get 10% off your first month. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review as well. Also on YouTube, just search Locked On Cavs. If you're watching this video right now, hit that thumbs up button, click subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest from Locked On Cavs. I have a second episode coming up later today, going around the week, if you will, where I'm going to talk to the Locked On hosts of that cover the teams the Cavs are playing. The regular season starts on Wednesday. We are getting really close, like 48 hours away from Cavaliers regular season basketball. So super excited for that. So if you've got those notifications turned on, you will know as soon as that goes up. But for your second listen today, go check out Locked On NBA because the NBA is back. Regular season games are here tomorrow. You need to know what's going on, not just with the Cavs. I've got you covered there, but with the rest of the league. So head on over to Locked On NBA and check that out. You can find that anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, on YouTube as well. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Cavs did wrap up their preseason slate on Friday night in Chicago. They lost to the Bulls in overtime. The Cavs finished preseason 0-4, which is not my favorite thing. I saw a stat from Matt Moore, who is one of the hosts of Locked On Nuggets, that since 2017, I think it was, or 2018, teams that have gone winless in the preseason, their win total under has hit 7 out of 10 times. The Cavs win total is set at 48.5, so I don't love that. I still am a believer in the Cavs hitting over 50 wins. Obviously, the injury bug has already started to hit, but going winless in the preseason, not my favorite thing in the world, but I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world either. So from the game against the Bulls on Friday night, I thought Jarrett Allen was awesome. Obviously, he stuffed the stat sheet. I think he finished with 25, 16. Every made basket was around the rim. I thought his teammates did a really good job of getting him involved. I love some of the big-to-big passing that we saw from Evan Mobley to Jarrett Allen, right? Like Evan's first assist, I think it was the first basket the Cavs scored in that game, was Evan set a pick for Darius Garland, got the ball, and then found Jarrett Allen for a lob on the short roll. Like, that's awesome. That's the kind of stuff I love to see out of Evan Mobley. It's stuff we know he's capable of. So that was really good to see. I thought Jarrett was awesome. Evan Mobley, obviously worth bringing up because he's the guy we were watching all preseason. We're going to be watching him as the season begins. It's going to be very important what he looks like as far as this team's success looks like. Him as a playmaker, very interesting. He flirted with a triple-double, finished just 2 assists shy. He had 8 assists. I don't know how many games he's going to have this year like this, but I'm willing to bet that Evan Mobley is going to have at least 5 games where he reaches double-digit assist totals. Like, he is somebody that I think by the end of the year, we are going to be talking about Evan Mobley as a triple-double candidate. I think his playmaking is taking that step. And I think that the Cavs put him in different positions to where he was a playmaker in different ways than he was in the past. He had one in transition where he threw, I believe it was a pass with his left hand, a wraparound pass to the right corner for an open three-pointer. And when I see that type of play, the guy I think of is Giannis. Like, that is who Evan Mobley looked like in that moment. It's not to say that's who he's going to be. That's who he's going to transform into. I don't necessarily believe those things. I don't know that that's possible, but that is instantly what I think of when I see that specific play. So I thought that was a really interesting thing to watch. When this starts to matter for real this week, the positions that Evan Mobley is going to be put in as a playmaker are going to be really, really interesting to see. That's the stuff I'm really looking forward to seeing. Obviously, the Cavs shot a ton of threes. I know it's overtime, so they have the extra 5 minutes in there. But 53 threes is a lot. It's probably a tick high like I mentioned at the end of last week, I think the sweet spot's probably between 45 and 50 threes, maybe between like 42 and 47 threes even might be a more accurate sweet spot for this team. But I did think that they played with good pace and getting up a lot of good looks. And they didn't shoot great. I think they were 32% against the Bulls. It wasn't the best shooting night. Donovan Mitchell didn't have a very good shooting night from the outside. So when that happens, when your best player in Donovan sort of struggles a little bit from the outside, your chances of winning are naturally just going to decrease a little bit. But the number of attempts, I think, is a good thing. And then lastly, I talked about who's going to fill in for Max Strus in that starting lineup while he's away. And Dean Wade was the starter in that 4th preseason game in which the Cavs basically treated like a regular game. So does that mean he's going to be the starter on opening night? I don't know. I would be very, very interested to find out. Hopefully we learn more throughout the week as the Cavs have practice before they head up to Toronto for their first regular season game on Wednesday. But that's what I took away from the Cavs last preseason game. Of course, they made their roster cuts over the weekend. They're at 14 players on standard NBA contracts. They've got 3 two-ways. I don't think they're adding anybody else anytime soon, and I will tell you why next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard me talk about FanDuel a ton. Why have you heard me talk about FanDuel a ton? Because they are America's #1 sports book. Unfortunately, I can't tell you anymore to go bet on the Cleveland Guardians because their season sadly is over. It was a tough loss. I was, obviously watching every single game. I was at a few of the playoff games. Very difficult to see them lose, but they had a great effort. So I can't tell you to bet on them and on FanDuel anymore. I don't know that I can tell you to bet on the Browns on FanDuel anymore because now who's going to play quarterback for them? We don't know. Maybe what you want to do is maybe you want to head over to FanDuel and check out what the Cleveland Cavaliers look like because basketball season is beginning, and that's going to be the thing that matters. That is going to be the thing that we can count on. The Cleveland Cavaliers right now, I've been telling you to take the over. I don't care that they went winless in preseason. 48.5 is their win total for the regular season on FanDuel. Now, that number has slightly shifted a little bit if you've been paying attention. It's not as if the number itself has changed, but the juice has. 48.5 minus 118. Before, the under was a little bit weighted, just a little bit more juice. Now the over. So they're sort of expecting a good year for the Cavs. I think the Cavs are going to win 50-plus games. Still think minus 118 at that number is pretty valuable. I do. So head on over to FanDuel because what FanDuel is doing right now is when you place your first $5 bet, you will get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Again, place your first $5 bet and you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just head on over to FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com today, and you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review as well. Help us grow the show. Cavs basketball is back. I think you've got some pretty good Cavs coverage. If you're listening right now, I want your friends and your family to have some of that same Cavs coverage. So be a friend and tell a friend. Also, if you're watching the show on YouTube right now, hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content anytime it's coming your way. So the Cavs did make some roster moves over the weekend as they waived Pete Nance, Jules Bernard, Jacob Gilliard, and Zaire Smith. All 4 of those players were on Exhibit 10 deals, meaning that they will now, in all likelihood, end up playing for the Cleveland Charge, the team's G League affiliate. And this means the Cavs have 14 players on NBA contracts, standard contracts, on their roster. They also have 3 players on 2-way deals in JT Thor, Amani Bates, and Luke Travers. So they've got 17 guys that are on the roster eligible to play in games. I posted this on Twitter, and immediately, I got the response, Lonnie Walker, who was cut by the Celtics, or Landry Shamet, who was cut by the Knicks with a shoulder injury. As questioning, could the Cavs add these guys? Could they? Sure. Would I expect them to? No. I would be very, very surprised if the Cavs added another player to the roster right now. You can obviously have 15 on the roster on standard deals, but the Cavs are a team that, as things stand right now, they're currently $1.685 million over the tax line. The Cavs should not want to be a tax team this year. It's not because the Cavs are cheap. They're not. Dan Gilbert has proven he's willing to spend money when it makes sense to spend that money. And it doesn't make sense to spend that money this year because the Cavs have already committed to spending that money for the foreseeable future. And with the repeater tax in the NBA, where when you reach that threshold year after year after year, it becomes more expensive instead of it being, $1 in tax per dollar over the tax line, it goes up to $2 and just keeps climbing. The Cavs are going to be in that position in the future, but they can press pause on starting that clock on being a tax team this year. This season is the last opportunity they have to not be in the tax for the foreseeable future. Because when Donovan Mitchell's extension kicks in, when Evan Mobley's extension kicks in, and even down the line, when Jarrett Allen's extension kicks in, they're going to be a very, very, very expensive team because they're already paying Darius Garland a lot of money too. And, the roster's not filled out. Like, they still have to sign other guys. So they're going to be a team that's going to get very expensive very soon. It's not that they're not worth being expensive now, because they are expensive now. But they're a team that if you can push this off for one more year, it makes sense to do it just from a roster, money management point of view. So I don't think the Cavs are going to sign anybody. If anything, at some point this year, we might see a consolidation trade where the Cavs end up trading 2 guys for one, or 1 guy for somebody that costs just a little bit less so they can sneak under that tax line and then be a first-time tax team next season. So they're at 14 players right now. I would not anticipate them adding anybody else. Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Keep an eye out for a little bonus edition of Locked On Cavs, something I want to start doing every Monday during the regular season. We'll see if I can pull it off or not, but that is the plan. So anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, make sure you're subscribed. Drop us a 5-star review. Leave a nice rating as well. Also, check us out on YouTube. If you're watching the video right now, hit that thumbs up button, click the notification bell, and make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content coming your way every day. I will be back a little bit later with another video, and back tomorrow.